Hi, I'm Brendan, that's Chelsea, this is Tim, and you're watching Life on Film. Today we're going to be discussing the movie, My Sister's Keeper.
Most babies are accidents. Not me. I was engineered. Born to save my sister's life.
My Sister's Keeper is a story which explores the issue of childhood terminal illness. The two main characters are two sisters. The older sister has leukemia. The younger sister has been created as what is known as a saviour sibling in order to be able to provide donor material to her older sister. And the film starts with the younger sister taking a court case against the family so that she can be medically emancipated and choose for herself whether or not she will be an organ donor for her older sister. Guys, tell me, what did you think? Let's start with the lovely Chelsea, the rose amongst the thorns. Chelsea, what did you think about the film?
Well, I'd read the book previously and I had really enjoyed the book and felt really let down by the movie because the ending's quite significantly different in the book than the movie.
Tim, what did you think?
Yeah, I actually had never seen the film before I read the book, and I'm not usually a person to watch those types of films, to be honest, but having experienced up close and personal a family member dying of cancer, it brought home a lot of the memories around that experience. But in terms of content, I suppose I enjoyed some of the themes that came out early in the film, but as it concluded, I started to see that perhaps they shouldn't have changed the ending from the book.
Tell me, Tim, let's talk about this, because as you said, you've had personal family experience with this, with your own mother-in-law, obviously dying of this of cancer. Tell me, how real do you think the movie reflects that reality of a family struggling with terminal illness? Because this is something that struck me as possibly one of the weaknesses of the film, that at times it's overly sentimental, but at other times it does seem to be quite real about this issue. How did you feel?
Well, I mean, for me personally, I wasn't a direct family member, so I had a different perspective than my wife or her siblings had. And of course it was a different type of cancer that affected my mother-in-law. But one thing that I suppose did strike me about the film and how it portrayed it is that it's something that has the potential to really divide families because of the different ways that different people deal with grief and with stress related to the illness. It's something that even though it might be one person in a massive family, it becomes an all-encompassing thing. And of course it wasn't a sibling, so the themes of perhaps sibling rivalry or jealousy are not something that I've seen, but it's definitely something that different people react to differently in terms of acceptance, denial, that kind of thing.
I want to see my parents for the rights to my own body.
Would you repeat that, please?
What's going on? Anna, you're suing us?
I don't want to do it anymore, Mom. It's my body. I want to be able to make my own decisions about what to do with it.
From the moment we decided to genetically conceive, I suppose it was our fault.
But it's against her will, so how does that work?
We went against nature, but we forced her into helping her sister.
Let's talk about now the central and most important issue, the reason why we're here really, the ethical question that lies at the heart of this film. And that's really the question of saviour siblings. How did the film handle that issue? Tim, what do you think?
For me, the crucial question is it right to, well, first of all, treat a human being as if they're nothing more than a spare parts, a living spare parts store, and second of all, if that human being was to object, is it right to coerce them for what you perceive to be the greater good, or in other words, what people normally think of as utilitarianism? The idea that the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. Of course, it was only two people particularly, but the mother did state that it was the entire family that was going to benefit from the sister's actions. So yeah, that was a question that was explored early on. But I didn't like the way that the film progressed on that question. It seemed to, I suppose, in the end, reduce it down from something that's really complex, and really it posed the question. It definitely posed the question, but then it reduced it to something by changing the book, and as we were discussing earlier, the ending of the book, it reduced the question to it's not important because it just works out in the end anyway, and you don't answer the question definitively.
So really what Tim is saying here, this really raises this issue again, doesn't it, Chelsea, perhaps of the way the film has changed the book. Like, for example, in the book, the younger sister, who is the saviour sibling, she is really the central character. It's pretty much her story, and there's different perspectives and different takes on that. But this film quickly shifts into being about the older sister, it becomes about terminal illness and about really the family rather than the younger sister. And obviously that has a bearing on the issue of donor siblings themselves.
Yeah, it's about the mother-daughter relationship becomes the key part of it, and the mother not wanting to let go of the daughter. And prior to even conceiving the child, they had had a complete family, and so the daughter was only produced to save the elder daughter who the mother didn't want to let go of. And so that whole premise around that is, yeah.
Well, for me, it's obviously pretty sort of straightforward. I think the question of is it acceptable to create donor siblings? I think if you're going to be an ethically good person, I don't think it is acceptable, because what you're saying is that person you are creating is going to be created as a means to an end, and that's very much, as Tim, as you said, it's brought out at the beginning of the film, and the narrative really at the beginning and her narration of her situation is really quite good, where she raises that issue that she wasn't created in love like the rest of her family. She wasn't received into her family as a gift. Instead, she is produced, or she's genetically engineered, if you like. She is engineered in a laboratory, ultimately in a petri dish, to be a perfect match to provide donor material for an older sibling. And you got to wonder what that does to a person's dignity when they get old enough to realise the only reason I am here is because I was produced to be in this family to provide donor material to one of my other family members, and if they didn't need that, I wouldn't be here. I am a means to an end, and you can't underestimate, I think, how powerful and profound a question that would be for someone. And ultimately, there's also the question of consent. She never consents to it. She never gives consent to being brought into the world in this way or for this reason. And there's this whole issue of how can a person give legitimate consent when they live in the family environment and all of the emotional pressures that would go on a person to say yes. It's pretty hard to say how informed consent would remain present in a family in that situation as well. Well, overall, guys, let's wrap this thing up. What do you think? How many stars out of 5 would you give My Sister's Keeper? Just as a film, first of all, how many stars out of 5, Tim?
Maybe 2.5, 3 stars perhaps. I mean, it wasn't a terrible film. There was some good performances. It's not the perfect film. My main issues are with the sort of moral ambiguity at the end. I think just actually as a side note, there's the unspoken implication that they don't touch on in the film at all. The process of creating the sister to be spare parts involves the destruction of embryos of human life. Those embryos that didn't meet the perfect match. So that's something that wasn't explored at all, which was disappointing.
Yeah, and I'd only give it probably a 2 because I think it's taken something that had so much depth and turned it into something really shallow, kind of Hollywood version that leaves out all the deeper issues that are involved. Yeah.
For me, I'm probably similar to you guys. It started out okay. Because of the way they changed the ending, I think for me the big question is the whole ethical heart of this movie is the story. It's meant to be the story. But by turning it into a situation where the younger sister basically at the end just says, oh well, it was only a trick, I only tried to sue for my own bodily emancipation as a trick to help my sister, I don't really mean it. Basically what it says to the audience is, that's no big deal, creating people to use them as spare parts, it's not that big a deal, utilitarianism means to an end, it's not a big deal, don't worry about how you treat persons, because the only reason this girl did this was because she needed some convenient ploy or ruse to help her sister. So for me that really stripped out the heart of the story, and there's also some other, I guess less important things about who they cast and how they had the tone of the film. So for me, yeah, maybe 2 stars, I think. Thanks for joining us today on Life on Film. As you can see, My Sister's Keeper, a film adaptation of the movie by Jodi Picoult. Some interesting ethical issues, but unfortunately they get lost in a bit of a haze of bad storytelling and some interesting casting decisions. So overall, I guess the consensus from the team here is that we'd give it maybe 2 stars out of 5.
Do I look pretty, Daddy?
I'll call it a die. I can't. It's important for you to feel like you never gave up. Sooner or later, you gotta let go.
I know I'll be okay. Sorry I let them hurt you. You know how brave you are.